amigos de Enfocados, mi nombre es Rubén Peralta y en este probablemente último programa del año les traigo unas entrevistas muy interesantes. Hace unos días tuve la oportunidad de conversar con Guillermo del Toro acerca de su nueva película Pinocho. Hoy les voy a presentar esa conversación básicamente con audio, porque fue una mesa redonda con un grupo de periodistas donde tuvimos la oportunidad de conversar con él y hacerle varias preguntas acerca de cómo surge el proyecto de Pinocho, que ya pueden ver en Netflix. También tuve la oportunidad de conversar con Olivia Colman y Sam Mendes. Sam Mendes es un ganador de Oscar por American Beauty, ha estado nominado varias veces, y Olivia Colman ya ganó Oscar por la película El Favorito, The Favorite, hace unos 3 años, y ha estado constantemente desde entonces nominada al premio. Ellos tienen una nueva película que se llama Imperio de la Luz y tuve la oportunidad de hacerles una pregunta dentro de una mesa redonda que también tuve, pero esta sí fue en video. Este es parte del contenido que vamos a tener hoy en Enfocados. Como les comenté al inicio, tuve la oportunidad de conversar con Guillermo del Toro. Yo y un grupo de amigos periodistas tuvimos la oportunidad de conversar con él. El tipo es una fuente increíble de sabiduría, buena vibra y muchísimas cosas interesantes. Y en esta mesa redonda conversamos junto con él y Mark Gustafson, que ambos dirigieron esta nueva película, esta nueva versión de Pinocho que pueden ver ya en Netflix, de cómo se creó. Y muchas de las preguntas van de acuerdo a la película. Si no han visto la película, es altamente recomendada, porque la entrevista le va a hacer más sentido cuando ya vean la película. Aquí les dejo mi conversación, o la conversación que tuve en una mesa redonda con el director Guillermo del Toro y Mark Gustafson.
So I want to ask about the songs, because that's a new skill set, writing songs with Alex and your two collaborators. Can you talk about that, like how you approach that?
Well, I'm a disgraced lyricist. Let me put it that way. I don't think I have a new skill. I actually have become acutely aware that I don't have that skill. It was by mere chance that my song came out okay, but the rest was just partial ideas, phrases, and stuff like that. And the real lyricist is Cats, and except if you consider that a song, the Rabbit's Funereal Song is written by Patrick and me. But it really is. It was more Alexander Cats taking the lead with the things we sketched.
Can you talk about how you prioritized Pinocchio with some of the other projects you were working on simultaneously?
We didn't. We could do it concurrently because we started with just a few units, very slow. Then the pandemic hit us.
Yeah, and then we eventually went up to about 60 units.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somewhere about 2/3 of the way through, and then you start ramping down again at the end.
Okay.
And no matter what, because of the pandemic, for many weeks we could only instruct animators through Zoom.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you can only instruct for so long.
Yes.
So you start your day or finish your day with that,
Wow.
and then you just keep that rhythm. No matter what you're doing, the only complication was for Mark and the story department. They had to travel to inconvenient locations to discuss the storyboard, but I think the actual shoot is easy because we started doing it by Zoom because of the pandemic, and we stayed by Zoom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And the nature of stop motion is that it's one animator on a set at a time. So once you've launched them and they're going, they're by themselves.
Yeah.
The natural state of an animator.
It's loneliness.
So pretty self-sufficient.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, except if they have a mental collapse or they find a technically difficult thing, but then they can resort to anybody, like Frank, if it's cinematography, or Mark, or Brian, if it's animation, or so.
Generally, you have to have already had a mental collapse
Yes.
in order to choose to be an
to
animator.
become an animator. Yes.
In most of your movies, you always use some of these political views.
Yes.
Even in this movie
Yeah.
with Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Why is that you put this political view, like with the dictator in Italy? Always like.
I think that is humanity. I think politics come after. Like if you're talking about paternity, and one of the darkest form of paternalistic presence is fascism or totalitarianism. But the main theme of the movie is not that. The main theme of the movie is fathers and sons, disobedience at a macro and a micro scale. So I think that it's interesting that to rebel against your father prepares you to rebel against the system, and to listen to a kid as a parent prepares you to listen to the world. I mean, I think kids are here to save the parents, and parents have this silly view that they are here to educate the kids. They're here to find grace in their kids, and this is the theme of the movie. It is that and acceptance of imperfection. And fascism has a tendency not to like imperfection and to simulate perfection and cohesiveness. So I think politics come after the human story, you know.
But you use it in a funny way, because we see it as like a caricatura, something like a cartoonish.
I think that everything about politics has a side that is cartoonish. Unfortunately, it is a parody of human interaction. That's the sad part of politics. When people say that I deal with fantasy, I say, no, politics are fantasy. The monetary system is fantasy. Geography is fantasy. You know, I think that the real art, which is materially useless, is spiritually the highest thing you can aspire to. So, you know, I think that...
And fart jokes.
And fart jokes. and a dancing poop. Yes. Yes. But I think Mussolini is... what is tragic is you have an entire nation at the service of this guy with a large limo and a very small ego, which is what it is. I mean, look at how the entire conscience of the world can be polarized by a person with a small ego. You know, or a damaged ego, you know.
So, you mentioned.
Can I ask you?
Yeah. Yes.
It's a personal question.
Yes, please. I cried enough.
Do you dream? And if you dream, what do you dream?
Very boring, exceedingly boring. I never ever have interesting dreams, ever. Like I've had 3 in my lifetime, and 2 of them were in childhood. I always dream that I swim in water. And I can breathe underwater. You know, people dream they can fly. I dream I can swim. So that's the only semi-interesting one.
Do you ever dream of new ideas for movies?
No, what I dream of is the day when I'm shooting live action. I dream of the day. And on Pinocchio, sometimes I would dream of a sequence that I thought was in trouble, and we would readdress it. But normally, I have the most pedestrian dreams in the world.
Do you see novels in your dreams?
The shooting, sorry?
What does a bad day of shooting stop motion look like? And I mean, what
No, like we had a sequence that we reboarded, largely the escape of the dogfish.
I dreamt that I spent 5 years working on an animated film.
That is a nightmare.
Gonna wake up.
My question is, you mentioned the press conference that you spent 1,000 days working on this film. So
1,000 days shooting.
Shooting, exactly. So would you go through it again? And if so, which other classic children's story would you like to try?
I would go through it again. I mean, this was the best experience of my life in terms of work. And it was so much fun. It was so rewarding. And, you know, I don't know what the next story is. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a children's story.
Hellboy 3.
Hellboy 3.
No, I think that you do what you need to do. I mean, there is no easy shoot. There is no easy shoot. And if it's intimate, it's the tone. If it's large, it's the scale. I mean, I would say technically Pacific Rim was incredibly complicated, but it was easy in other ways. And Nightmare Alley was technically not as complicated, but incredibly difficult tonally. So I think, we had a blast. It was a lot of work, but we had a blast, and love and respect. Yeah.
I have a couple questions about fathers and sons. The first is with Geppetto and Pinocchio. What didn't he learn first with his first son that he had to grow to learn with Pinocchio? And the dynamic between Ron Perlman's character and his son and Geppetto and Pinocchio, how you crafted that, and how, 10 years or so building these characters, where the metamorphosis came from.
Well, there were the ideas that were basic were the same, but there were two sets of screenplays. And I think that the character of the enemy that becomes a friend is something I like to be recurrent, because I think it's a possibility in life. But it's in Devil's Backbone, it's on Hellboy, it's in here and there, you know. And the idea was the Pinocchio makes all the sons or kids in the movie rebel against their fathers. Spazzatura rebels against Volpe. Candlewick finally can tell his father what he thinks. And it's about models of masculinity or models of behavior, which are incredibly constrictive, especially when the father is trying to impose them on the son. Like the fascist says, look at him, he's a model of fascist youth. No jaundice, you know, and the son is like, I'm not that what you want me to be. The thing that you learn when your kids review you in the teenage years is that they're not an accessory to you. They are not there to make you look good or make you look bad. They're there to exist and give you the chance of salvation. So that's in the movie, you know, and it's not a decision about character, it's an evolution of character.
And yeah, and because in many ways it's the story of Geppetto, when you meet Carlo, you're seeing him through this romanticized eyes of, you know, it's what he remembers his son to be like. And so he's perfect. And he wants perfection, and that's what he wants from Pinocchio, and that's why he's so angry and disappointed with Pinocchio, because he doesn't match up to this romanticized version of his lost son.
Imagine one of the precepts that I discussed with Patrick McHale. I said, what if a man prays for a miracle, and when it comes, he doesn't recognize it? You know, it's like, because he's blind. And that's where the cricket says, are you so blind? I said, I'm a bug, sir, but I can teach you a thing or two about being a man, you know?
Speaking of the...
sorry, and then you... Yeah.
Speaking of the cricket, I know we were saying off before we start recording, but thank you for not killing him off, because there were so many funny scenes that I was laughing, especially at his pain.
Yes.
But
so do I.
I have a question about the writing process. I went into the film without reading any press, without reading production notes, watching the trailer or anything. So, like, when I think of Pinocchio, I always think of those nightmare scenes of boys turning into donkeys. So, what went into the decision process of not including those sequences?
They are there. The function of those sequences is to seduce the kids into something that looks fun and then turn it into something horrible. And the re-education youth camp is essentially that. It starts with paint and grenades, and they're enjoying it and doing sports, and there are funny songs playing in the loudspeakers. And then they, instead of turning into donkeys, they get gas masks put on, and they go to war. And the turning moment is when you go from playing and planting a flag to him putting the real gun and saying, shoot the puppet. So the function in dramaturgy is exactly the same as Pleasure Island. And the decision was, if we, when Mark and I were talking about that sequence, which is, by the way, the sequence that Pat McHale and I rewrote the most, the whole re-education camp. But like Pat McHale said to me, we were having one of our little arguments, and he said, but I don't think Pinocchio really understands why he's there. And I said, well, then let Pinocchio say that. And that started that conversation at night between the two kids. But the function is dramaturgically identical to Pleasure Island. The difference is Pleasure Island is a moral warning that is pro-structure and against bad behavior. And this is actually against the structure and pro-making your own decisions and saying, I can say no, Father, can you? So it leads to the exact opposite function, but by the same devices.
I mean, I really appreciated not having to see scenes of someone turning into a donkey.
Yeah, it was the scariest thing I've ever saw. Jennifer.
There's so much I mean, the film is so inventive, technically, and there's such a profound quality to the story. I've heard so much conversation thus far about technology.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether you are concerned at all that the impact of the story will not be discussed as much as the technological.
I don't think so. You?
No, I don't think so. Everything we did was in service of the story, and we didn't actually push the technology to its limits.
We went back.
Yeah, we consciously chose to not to do certain things because we wanted you to feel the hands of the artists that were involved in it.
All right. Well, I feel truly pacing.
Y ya estamos de vuelta. Espero que les haya gustado la conversación que tuvimos con Guillermo. Guillermo fuera y en la cámara es increíble, de verdad que sí. Es un gran tipo. Y este amor por contar historias se siente. Y eso es lo que más nos llama la atención. También, como les comentaba, Sam Mendes es un director que es muy reconocido en Hollywood. Estuvo nominado el año pasado por la película 1917. Ganó Oscar por American Beauty. Dirigió 2 películas de James Bond. El tipo tiene un currículum increíble. Es un gran director. También tuve la oportunidad de conversar con Olivia Colman, una gran actriz que puede hacer comedia, puede hacer drama, puede hacer todo y lo hace genial. Olivia ganó Globo de Oro, ganó Oscar, ha ganado de todo. Es una gran actriz. Tuve la oportunidad de conversar con el equipo, con el elenco de su nueva película que se llama Imperio de la Luz, a la cual le vamos a pasar el tráiler justo después de la entrevista. Mi pregunta fue alrededor de cómo estamos en sistema de streaming, cómo se sienten ellos más cómodos, si es en una sala de cine o en su casa viendo alguna película o alguna serie. Y esto fue lo que me contestaron.
This movie really touched me in a really deep sense, because when I was a kid in the Dominican Republic, my best friend was going to the movies. He was going to the movies. I have this experience of going to the movies, getting dressed, sitting in a dark room and watching a movie. How do you guys feel now that we have streaming and this movie was made to watch in a theater? And I feel that this love letter to the movie is to take people to the movies, to have this action of going to the films instead of staying home and watch a movie and like we're doing now. How do you guys feel? My question for Sam and Olivia.
Well, I know that we probably feel the same. Sam will put it more eloquently than me, no doubt. But I love going to the cinema. I love sitting in a room that is nothing like my home, that is 10 times the size of any room we could ever have, with people I don't know and having a shared experience. I feel that about the theatre too. But cinema can go to places the theatre can't. You know, you can't have an explosion on stage. Well, you can, but it's never as good. And just that shared, you know, if it's emotional, you know that all these human beings, wherever they're from, are feeling the same stuff. It is an extraordinary experience. And it's something I don't go as often as I used to go, because we do have the opportunity to watch films at home. But when I go, I'm really pleased I've been. And it's something that can't be touched. It can't be recreated in your sitting room. It's just not big enough or loud enough. And you know, to feel that bass in your stomach when the music's playing, it's a breathtaking and beautiful experience that I feel sad that maybe my kids won't experience as much as I did, but I want to force them to.
Yeah, I can't put it much better than that. I mean, I do think that we create it. I mean, it's a miracle in a way that, you know, when I was researching this movie, and I was originally going to set it in a slightly larger South Coast English town called Brighton, and I researched how many cinemas there were in Brighton after the war, and it's a small town, and there were 46 cinemas in Brighton.
Wow,
and then even in 1980, there were 14, right? I mean, it had gone down, but there were still 14 cinemas in quite a small town. Wow. And now there are 4, right? And so obviously you just think it's been on the wane since the advent of television. So this is no different. But I do think that what we have now, we are preserving that experience. And I think that what's happened to cinemas, which is that the advent of things like Dolby Sound and Dolby Atmos, I mean, and surround sound and comfort and food and ease and community, those things we were deprived of during the pandemic, I think we're going to want even more. So I am an optimist about it. I feel like that experience is going to be preserved, and it's really just about getting out there and sending the message. The issue is about keeping the variety of movies available to you in the cinema, so it's not entirely dominated by giant franchises. And that is the thing that I think we're all fighting for, that we can make a non-franchise event movie like 1917. We can make a movie like this, and they're seen in the cinema. So it's up to the filmmakers to just be up for the challenge of making movies that use all the tools of the cinema to make it exciting, to get you in, you know. And that's why, let's face it, that's why we're here. That's why I'm talking to you. It's why we're all talking to each other. We want people to go to the fucking cinema. That's just like, you know, and whether it's to see this or something else, I honestly don't care. You know, I obviously want people to see this movie, but you know, the experience of it is something I really believe in, and it's in the movie. Stephen says, you know, go and sit in the dark where they can't see your face. They don't even know you're there, right? That little beam of light is escape. And I think it is for a lot of people. And I think we have to try and remember that we can escape in a different way when we're not in our front rooms. And it's it's exciting.
Thank you.
Y ya para cerrar, hace unos días, 2 días, salió el nuevo teaser trailer de la nueva película de la directora Greta Gerwig, que se llama Barbie. Se ve que es una película basada en la famosa muñeca Barbie. No sé cuál sería el tono que le van a dar, si es un mundo de fantasía, si es una especie de biografía, no se sabe. Pero el trailer le hace un homenaje directo a 2001, Odisea al espacio, del director Stanley Kubrick. Aquí les dejo ya para cerrar el programa de esta semana con el teaser trailer de la nueva película Barbie, dirigida por Greta Gerwig. Feliz año nuevo, feliz Navidad. Nos vemos el año que viene.